The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the sprawling landscape of the family property. The farmhouse, with its weathered porch and rustic charm, stood as both a cherished memory and a new beginning for the protagonist, Ethan. Following the passing of his beloved grandfather, he inherited not just land but a legacy steeped in stories, the most significant being the old well that lay behind the house. As Ethan surveyed the scene, memories flooded back. Summers spent splashing in the nearby creek, evenings gathered around a lantern while tales of yore were shared. The well was more than just an antiquated structure. It served as a symbol of kinship and continuity. It had witnessed generations grow and thrive, preserving his family's history within its stones. However, this tranquil inheritance quickly turned turbulent when Ethan discovered ominous letters from the Homeowners Association, HOA, spearheaded by Margaret Wilson. Her name sent ripples of dread through his heart. Always eager to impose her vision on the community, Margaret was relentless in her crusade against anything she deemed unsightly or unsafe, an ideology that now placed his cherished well squarely in her crosshairs. Ethan couldn't fathom how someone could dismiss something so historically significant so flippantly. The well had been functional for over a century, serving as a reminder of simpler times and familial bonds that transcended mere bricks and mortar. Yet Margaret insisted it posed a safety hazard, a claim that felt both absurd and personal to Ethan. Feeling a blend of anger and determination, he vowed to protect not only his inheritance but also his family's rich heritage. Armed with memories and motivations stronger than any fine imposed by an HOA board member, he began to strategize how to confront this unwarranted attack on his family's legacy. With each plan drawn up in his mind, Ethan knew that their fight was not just about property. It was about standing firm against those who sought to erase history for their own gain. As Ethan delved deeper into the letters from the HOA, a sense of unease settled over him. The first notice detailed a fine for unapproved structures on his property, referring specifically to the well. He dismissed it initially, believing no one could take such an essential part of his heritage away. But with each subsequent letter, the tone became increasingly aggressive, threatening legal action if he did not comply with their demands. Margaret Wilson's name appeared frequently in those letters, and Ethan could almost hear her disdainful voice echoing through the pages. Known in the community for her uncompromising stance on aesthetics and safety, Margaret reveled in wielding her power within the HOA. To her, the well was an eyesore. To Ethan, it was a testament to generations of family history. The growing tension between them mirrored a battle between preservation and regulation. Ethan's initial disbelief turned into anger as he attended the next HOA meeting. The room buzzed with discontent as residents expressed their support for Margaret's initiatives to modernize and beautify their neighborhood. Comments about safety hazards and property values filled the air like heavy smoke, clouding any chance for rational discourse. When it was Ethan's turn to speak, his voice trembled with a mix of passion and frustration. He articulated the historical significance of the well and how it had been part of their family long before any bylaws were established. Yet his words seemed to bounce off Margaret's thick skin like pebbles against steel. "It's just a well," someone called out from the back, an attempt at solidarity that fell flat under Margaret's steely glare. Afterward, feeling more isolated than ever but resolute in his purpose, Ethan strategized his next move. Gathering evidence and rallying support became paramount. He knew he couldn't fight this battle alone. With determination fueling him, he began to plot how he would challenge Margaret's unjust campaign against his family's legacy head-on. Margaret Wilson was a name that stirred mixed emotions in the hearts of community members. As a board member of the HOA, she wielded power with an iron fist, often relishing her role as the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood standards. Her reputation as an overzealous enforcer made her both feared and resented. She took it upon herself to dictate the aesthetic direction of the community, intertwining personal preference with property regulations. With sharp features and an unwavering gaze, Margaret exuded an air of authority that was hard to challenge. Her meticulously manicured lawn and perfectly aligned garden statues served as a testament to her obsession with perfection. She believed that every home should reflect a certain image, one that adhered strictly to her interpretation of beauty and safety. To her, deviations from this norm were not merely eyesores but threats that could tarnish the neighborhood's reputation. The well on Ethan's property became her latest target, symbolizing everything she opposed. It was rustic, unrefined, and far from the polished image she envisioned for their community. In her mind, it stood as a glaring reminder of outdated traditions, a relic that needed to be erased. Margaret's campaign against the well quickly escalated, fueled by her conviction that safety concerns justified any measures necessary to eliminate it. As HOA meetings convened, Margaret would dominate discussions, often cutting off anyone who dared oppose her views. She thrived in these settings, presenting herself as a champion of order while dismissing dissenting opinions as irrelevant or misguided. "We must protect our property values," she would declare with fervor, invoking fear among residents who worried about potential fines or legal trouble if they crossed her path. Yet beneath this rigid exterior lay an underlying insecurity. Margaret craved control in a world that often felt chaotic. Ironically, this quest for order led her to become the very bully she claimed to combat. As Ethan faced off against her formidable presence, he realized that unraveling Margaret's grip on power would require not just legal strategy, but also insight into the vulnerabilities behind her facade. A journey that would reveal more than just a conflict over property rules, but a deeper struggle for justice and historical preservation. The well on Ethan's property stood as a testament to the rich history of his family and the community, its stones mottled with moss and time, each crack whispering stories of generations past. For over a century, it had provided water not only for the household but also for neighbors in times of need. Its presence was a cherished part of family gatherings, where children played nearby while elders shared tales that echoed through the years. As Ethan gazed at the well, he could almost envision his grandfather drawing water from it on hot summer days or the laughter of relatives who had gathered around it during family reunions. It wasn't just a functional structure. It was the heart of countless memories, birthdays celebrated, friendships forged, and life lessons learned. The well was intricately tied to his family's identity, symbolizing resilience and continuity against the backdrop of changing times. In the broader context of the community, the well represented more than just Ethan's family history. It embodied a sense of connection among residents. Many families had relied on its water during droughts or emergencies, fostering a spirit of cooperation and neighborliness that Margaret Wilson's rigid rules sought to undermine. To those who understood its significance, the well was an important part of their shared heritage, one deserving of protection rather than condemnation. Ethan knew that Margaret's intention to dismantle what she deemed an eyesore threatened to erase a vital thread in the community's tapestry. He felt compelled not only to defend his family legacy, but also to preserve a piece of local history that had nurtured bonds between families for generations. Each day that passed felt like an added weight on his shoulders as he recognized that this battle extended far beyond aesthetics. It was now a pivotal fight for cultural preservation against forces eager to sanitize their shared past. Armed with these memories and their significance, Ethan prepared for the confrontation ahead, determined that both his family's history and the community spirit would not be extinguished without a fight. Despite Ethan's mounting efforts to rally support for the preservation of the well, Margaret's aggression intensified. She escalated her campaign by enlisting other HOA board members, painting the well as a dire safety hazard that posed risks to children and property values alike. Her rhetoric transformed community meetings into battlegrounds, filled with her warnings about potential lawsuits and insurance liabilities if the well remained. Margaret began sending notices not only to Ethan but to his neighbors as well, claiming that the decaying structure could lead to accidents or even injuries. "How would you feel if someone got hurt?" she would ask, her tone a mix of concern and accusation that left little room for dissent. Those who initially were sympathetic to Ethan's plight began to waver under pressure, some even voicing their fears of repercussions from the HOA if they supported him. Feeling the walls close in, Ethan sought out a water rights attorney named Clara who specialized in preserving historical properties. During their first meeting, she pored over documents and reminded him of his rights. "This well has been historically significant for generations," Clara emphasized. "You need evidence, not just memories, but concrete data that shows its contribution to the community." Equipped with newfound hope, Ethan started documenting everything he could about the well's history and its impact on the community. He reached out to local historians and former residents who had stories about how the well had served as a lifeline during dry seasons. Each tale added weight to his case, while simultaneously revealing the depth of connection people had with this seemingly humble structure. Still, Margaret was relentless. As her campaign ramped up, she covertly hired inspectors whom she believed would echo her claims of danger regarding the well's condition. Their reports started to trickle back to Ethan, filled with exaggerated concerns that painted an alarming picture. Each inspection felt like an attack more personal than professional, driving home the reality that this conflict was not just about property lines. It was a direct assault on his family's legacy. Determined not to let fear silence him, Ethan steeled himself for an impending confrontation with Margaret, now more resolute than ever in fighting for what his family had built, and what he believed deserved preservation, not destruction. The stakes had risen. This was now a battle for history against an opponent who saw only liability in what he cherished as heritage. With the stakes rising and the threat to his family's well becoming more imminent, Ethan felt a surge of urgency to solidify his defense. He made an appointment with Clara, the water rights attorney who had a reputation for fiercely protecting historical properties. As he entered her office, surrounded by legal books and framed awards, he felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Clara listened intently as Ethan recounted his struggles with the HOA and Margaret's relentless campaign against the well. She leaned back in her chair, considering his words carefully. "You need to gather as much evidence as possible," she advised. "It's not just about defending your property, it's about proving that the well is an integral part of your family's history and your community's heritage." Inspired by her guidance, Ethan began to compile a timeline of the well's significance. He reached out to local historians and longtime residents who could attest to its importance. Each conversation unearthed anecdotes about how families had relied on its water during droughts and how it served as a gathering place for celebrations. He realized that these stories weren't just sentimental, they created a narrative that could sway public opinion. In parallel, Ethan invested in a security system to monitor any attempts by Margaret or her allies to damage the well. The cameras would serve as both protection and documentation, capturing evidence if anything were to happen. He also contacted the State Historical Society for support, seeking their endorsement of the well as a protected site. As he worked tirelessly to build his case, Ethan's confidence grew. He visualized standing in front of the HOA board armed with facts, figures, and heartfelt testimonials from community members who valued the well as much as he did. This was no longer just about personal stakes, it was about rallying his neighbors around a shared cause. With each passing day, Ethan felt more prepared for the confrontation ahead. Every step he took strengthened his resolve that preserving his family's legacy was not just an obligation, it was a battle worth fighting, and one that might inspire others to stand up against intimidation in their own lives. Ethan knew that in order to effectively counter Margaret's increasingly aggressive tactics, he needed tangible proof of any attempts to damage the well. With this in mind, he made the decision to install a security system around the structure. The installation would not only serve as a deterrent against potential sabotage, but also document any incidents that could be useful in court. The next day, Ethan met with a local security company known for its reliable surveillance systems. As they discussed options, he chose high-resolution cameras with night vision capabilities that would provide round-the-clock monitoring. The technician assured him that the footage could be accessed remotely, allowing Ethan to keep an eye on the well even when he was away. Together, they carefully positioned the cameras to cover all angles of the well's surroundings. Once the installation was complete, Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had taken a proactive step in safeguarding not just his family heirloom, but also his case against Margaret. Now, if there were any attempts to tamper with the well, whether it was vandalism or further legal harassment, he would have evidence to support his claims. In the days that followed, Ethan frequently checked the live feed from his phone, feeling both empowered and anxious. He began documenting daily observations in a journal, noting any unusual activity around the property. His vigilance paid off when he captured footage of an HOA inspector visiting unannounced one afternoon. Margaret had sent them without prior notice, clearly trying to gather more ammunition against him. With each passing day, Ethan grew more resolute in his mission to defend his family's legacy. Armed with video evidence and Clara's legal expertise, he was preparing not just for a fight over property lines, but for a battle that represented much more. A struggle for history and community values against an adversary who would stop at nothing to erase them. As he reviewed the footage late one night, Ethan felt a new wave of determination rise within him. He realized that every click of the camera was not just capturing images. It was recording a stand against bullying and injustice, a fight he was committed to winning for himself and future generations who deserved to know their heritage. Recognizing the growing importance of his battle, Ethan reached out to the State Historical Society, understanding that their involvement could provide critical support in his fight to preserve the well. He hoped their expertise and authority would add weight to his claims about the well's historical significance. After submitting his request for assistance, he anxiously awaited their response, knowing that a partnership with such an esteemed organization could be pivotal. A few days later, he received a call from Rachel, a representative of the society who specialized in local heritage conservation. She expressed her enthusiasm about the potential of working together. "We're always looking to support initiatives that protect our community's history," she assured him. "The well not only represents your family's legacy, but also serves as a vital part of our shared narrative." Ethan arranged a meeting at the farmhouse, eager to showcase the well and discuss its history. As Rachel inspected the structure, she listened intently to Ethan's stories about family gatherings and how the well had served generations. Impressed, she took detailed notes and promised to help create a comprehensive report highlighting its significance that could be presented to the HOA and, if necessary, in court. Moreover, Rachel encouraged Ethan to reach out to community members who had benefited from the well over the years. She suggested they gather testimonials from neighbors who shared fond memories connected to the well, enhancing the case for its preservation. Inspired by this collaboration, Ethan organized a community gathering where residents could share their stories and write letters of support. As word spread about their collective efforts, more neighbors showed up than he had anticipated, united by a common cause. This newfound community spirit reignited Ethan's hope. He realized he was not alone in this fight. The Historical Society's involvement lent credibility to his cause, while the voices of his neighbors provided a powerful narrative that painted the well not just as an eyesore, but as a cherished landmark. Equipped with the backing of the State Historical Society and a growing list of supporters, Ethan felt empowered to face Margaret head-on. The confrontation was no longer just about defending one family's property. It had transformed into a significant stand for community heritage and history, a battle that resonated deeply with everyone involved. As Ethan continued to rally support for the well, he stumbled upon a lead that could add an unexpected twist to his conflict with Margaret. While researching historical records at the local library, he came across an old newspaper article that mentioned a scandal involving Margaret's family decades ago. The piece detailed how her ancestors had been implicated in a land-grabbing scheme, using questionable tactics to acquire properties in the area during the town's early development. Intrigued, Ethan sought out more information and connected with an elderly resident who remembered the events vividly. She recounted tales of how Margaret's family had exploited vulnerable homeowners, leveraging their power to intimidate those who resisted. "They thought they could do anything without facing consequences," the woman explained, her voice tinged with bitterness. This revelation was not only shocking, but provided Ethan with insights into Margaret's current behavior as well. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Ethan began to piece together how this history may have shaped Margaret's obsession with control and perfectionism today. He realized that her aggressive campaign against the well wasn't just about property values. It was rooted in a legacy of power struggles and fear-mongering passed down through generations. This understanding gave him a deeper perspective on his adversary, revealing layers to her character that allowed him to navigate their conflict more strategically. With Clara's help, Ethan decided to incorporate this hidden history into his defense strategy. They crafted a narrative that would challenge Margaret's credibility while highlighting her family's long-standing disregard for community values. If he could illustrate that her actions were part of a pattern rather than isolated incidents, it would bolster his case significantly. As Ethan shared these developments with Rachel from the Historical Society, she expressed enthusiasm about including this context in their outreach efforts. Together, they planned to present not only the significance of the well, but also the broader implications of allowing someone with such a tainted legacy to dictate community standards. Ethan felt a new wave of determination surge within him. This battle was becoming not just about preserving his family's heritage, but also about confronting systemic injustices that had plagued their community for far too long. With fresh resolve and allies by his side, he prepared for the fight ahead, ready to shine a light on both sides of this contentious story. The day of the courtroom showdown finally arrived, and Ethan felt a mixture of anxiety and determination as he stood outside the courthouse. He had meticulously prepared his case, gathering historical documents, testimonials from neighbors, and the supporting report from the State Historical Society. Today was not just about defending the well. It was a chance to bring to light the history that could redefine everything Margaret represented. As the proceedings began, Ethan took his place at the plaintiff's table alongside Clara. Margaret sat smugly with her attorney, confident in her position and prepared to dismiss Ethan's claims as baseless. The judge called the court to order, and Ethan felt a surge of resolve wash over him. This was his moment to present not just facts, but the emotional weight of a community's legacy. Clara opened with a strong argument, detailing the well's historical significance and its role in the lives of local families for over a century. She underscored how it served as a symbol of resilience and connection among neighbors, revealing that it wasn't merely property but a cherished part of the community's identity. As evidence was presented, Ethan took a deep breath and launched into his narrative, recounting stories shared during the community gathering. He painted vivid pictures of childhood memories around the well, emphasizing how it had been an integral part of family histories, something Margaret could not understand given her family's exploitative past. Then came the twist. With Rachel's corroborating documentation in hand, Clara unveiled Margaret's family history of land-grabbing tactics. "It appears," she stated firmly, "that the pattern of intimidation does not belong solely to my client, but extends back to those who sought power through fear." Margaret's face paled as murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Ethan pressed on, highlighting that protecting the well meant more than preserving bricks and mortar. It symbolized a stand against the very behaviors that had plagued their community for generations. The courtroom atmosphere shifted dramatically as jurors exchanged glances, clearly impacted by this revelation. What had begun as a simple property dispute had evolved into a profound exploration of ethics, heritage, and social justice. Ethan's heart raced as he witnessed the jury engage with his narrative. This was not just about preserving an old structure, it was about reclaiming their history from those who would suppress it. As he concluded his statements, he felt confident that they were ready to make a decision, not just for him, but for all those who believed in standing against injustice. As the trial progressed, the courtroom atmosphere became electric, charged with the weight of history and the stakes involved. The judge, keenly aware of the case's implications for both parties and the larger community, listened intently as the arguments unfolded. Ethically and socially, the divide between Ethan's defense and Margaret's aggressive stance crystallized in stark contrast. Clara continued to articulate how the well was more than a simple source of water. It represented resilience against forces that sought to erase local identity and heritage. "This is not merely a fight for property rights," she argued passionately. "It is a struggle against systemic bullying that has plagued our community for generations. The well stands as a symbol of unity, a point of gathering where families shared joy and hope." Margaret's attorney attempted to downplay these emotional connections, focusing instead on legally defined property lines and supposed safety risks. Yet, as Clara presented testimonials from community members recounting personal stories tied to the well, it became clear that this case strayed far beyond technicalities. Each story further solidified Ethan's stance, illustrating how interconnected their histories were and how Margaret's actions threatened that fabric. The trial effectively turned into a platform for discussing broader themes of justice. It showcased how historical preservation intertwined with social equity. Witness after witness echoed sentiments about their shared cultural identity being at stake, not just as individuals, but as a community united against tyranny. Then came a pivotal moment. Rachel from the Historical Society respectfully urged the court to consider the long-term impact of siding with intimidation versus preserving history. Her insights opened eyes to how allowing bullying within HOA structures could set dangerous precedents, potentially legitimizing fear-based governance over communal engagement. Ethan felt galvanizing energy surge through him as he witnessed people begin to support his arguments not just for personal gain, but due to collective purpose, the need to protect their heritage against unjust forces within their neighborhood. As closing arguments loomed, Ethan knew he had successfully reframed his fight into one resonant with universal significance, a testament to perseverance against inequity that would pave the way for future generations determined to uphold justice in their own communities. With newfound resolve and solidarity surrounding him, Ethan prepared himself for what would surely be a defining moment in not only his life, but also in their collective history. After days of intense deliberation, the courtroom finally buzzed with anticipation as the jury returned with their verdict. Ethan held his breath, heart racing, as he and Clara exchanged hopeful glances. The judge cleared his throat and the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the front as he prepared to deliver the decision. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, the judge began, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ethan Harris. A wave of relief washed over Ethan, and he could hardly believe what he had just heard. A chorus of gasps filled the room, followed by murmurs of disbelief from Margaret and her attorney. The judge continued, emphasizing the historical significance of the well and its role in the community's identity. This court recognizes that the well is not merely a structure on a property, but an emblem of community heritage. It shall be designated as a protected historical landmark. Ethan felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes as he absorbed this monumental victory. The well would not only remain, but also be preserved for future generations to appreciate and cherish. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice echoing through time, celebrating this moment alongside him. Margaret's face was a mixture of shock and anger as she realized her attempts to erase this piece of history had failed. Her grip on power had been challenged, and it was clear that the tide had shifted in favor of community values over her authoritarian control. As applause erupted from supporters gathered inside and outside the courtroom, Ethan stood tall. This was not just his victory, but a triumph for everyone who believed in standing up against bullying and preserving their shared history. In the days that followed, Ethan received messages from neighbors expressing their gratitude and admiration for his perseverance. The well became a focal point for renewed community engagement, with plans to host gatherings that celebrated both local history and unity. With renewed hope and purpose, Ethan realized that this resolution was just the beginning. Together with his neighbors, he envisioned a future where they could continue to safeguard their heritage against those who would threaten it. United by their shared love for history and community, they would ensure that such injustices would never arise again. In the weeks following the triumphant verdict, a remarkable transformation swept through the community. The well, once targeted as an eyesore, now stood proudly as a protected historical landmark, serving as a symbol of resilience and unity. Ethan took it upon himself to organize gatherings around the well, inviting neighbors to come together and celebrate their shared heritage. As families gathered for picnics and storytelling sessions, the air filled with laughter and camaraderie. Children played games while elders exchanged tales of their connections to the well, recounting how it had served as a source of water during droughts and a meeting point for community events throughout the decades. These moments of connection fostered a renewed sense of belonging that had been overshadowed by Margaret's authoritarian rule. Ethan was heartened to see how the community's attitude toward history preservation shifted dramatically. No longer were residents passive observers, they became active participants in safeguarding their heritage. A local history committee was formed, spearheaded by Rachel from the Historical Society, aimed at identifying other significant landmarks in the area that deserved protection. This grassroots effort encouraged greater awareness of their history and instilled pride among residents. As Ethan walked around the well one sunny afternoon, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had not only restored an important family heirloom, but had also rekindled community spirit and engagement amongst his neighbors. Conversations once tinged with fear now brimmed with hope and determination, as more people expressed a commitment to preserving their shared identity. The victory over Margaret had transcended the courtroom. It had sparked a movement against bullying within community structures. Residents began to speak out against intimidation tactics used by various entities, strengthening bonds between them and reinforcing the notion that they could collectively advocate for their rights. Ethan realized that this was only the beginning of a legacy rooted in mutual respect and collaboration. With each gathering by the well, he recognized that history was not merely about preserving the past. It was about fostering connections that would shape their future. Empowered by their newfound unity and purpose, Ethan and his neighbors felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, committed to ensuring that their heritage would always be honored and protected. As Ethan stood by the well during one of the community gatherings, he reflected on how far they had come together. Once a target for destruction, the well now radiated a sense of purpose, embodying the strength and unity that had emerged from their collective struggle. The journey had transformed him. He was no longer just a defender of a family heirloom, but a catalyst for change within his community. Ethan's resilience and strategic planning had not only preserved his grandfather's legacy, but also inspired others to assert their rights against bullying and intimidation. The well served as a reminder that when individuals unite for a common cause, they can challenge even the most entrenched powers. Neighbors who once felt isolated began to understand the importance of standing up for what was right, realizing that heritage should be actively celebrated and protected rather than passively assumed. The formation of the local history committee marked another significant milestone in this transformation. Residents were now eager to research and document other historical sites in the area, fostering an environment where heritage was valued. This community-driven effort ignited discussions about identity, belonging, and responsibility toward preserving their shared history for future generations. Ethan found great satisfaction in witnessing this change firsthand. The heartfelt exchanges during gatherings highlighted not only personal stories tied to the well, but also an emerging narrative of resilience shared among neighbors. As old tensions dissipated, laughter and camaraderie replaced fear and division. It became clear that the battle against Margaret's authoritarian rule had rekindled trust and solidarity. With each celebration around the well, Ethan recognized that their victory extended beyond legal triumph. It had restored a sense of community spirit, uniting residents through a shared commitment to safeguard their cultural heritage. As they faced new challenges together, Ethan knew that they could rely on each other to uphold their ideals and resist any future attempts at oppression. In this newfound era of collaboration and pride, Ethan's belief in justice grew stronger. He felt empowered to continue advocating for fairness not just for himself, but for every voice within the community. Their journey together would ensure that history wasn't merely something to remember, it was something to live by, a lasting legacy that would inspire courage in generations yet to come. As Ethan surveyed the well surrounded by laughter and the chatter of neighbors, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Not only had he secured the well's status as a protected historical landmark, but he had also played a pivotal role in revitalizing the community spirit that had been dimmed by fear and oppression. The journey to this moment had been fraught with challenges, yet it had shaped him into a leader who understood the importance of resilience and collective action. The well, now a vibrant focal point for community gatherings, served as a reminder of what could be achieved when individuals stand together against injustice. With each event, more residents embraced their roles as guardians of their heritage, eager to share stories that connected them to one another and to the land they lived on. The local history committee worked diligently to preserve not only the well but also other significant sites around town, fostering an environment where history was respected and celebrated. Ethan had become a symbol of change himself, demonstrating that one person's determination could inspire others to rise up against bullying and to fight for what was right. His experience galvanized neighbors who had previously felt powerless, empowering them to advocate for their rights and take pride in their shared history. Conversations about community values shifted from fear-based whispers to passionate discussions about what it meant to preserve their identity and traditions. In reflecting on his transformation, from an isolated defender of a family heirloom to a catalyst for community empowerment, Ethan recognized that the battle for justice transcended personal stakes. It was about nurturing connections that would endure through time. He understood that preserving history was not merely an obligation, but an opportunity to instill courage in future generations. As he looked out over the gathering crowd, Ethan felt confident that this newfound unity would protect them against any future attempts at intimidation. The well stood firm as both a literal and figurative cornerstone of their community, a legacy rooted in justice, familial connection, and the unwavering belief that together they could uphold their values against all odds. This journey had only just begun. With each celebration around the well, they would continue to write their own story, a narrative filled with hope, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to stand up for what is right.